One thing I would say to doctors is it is no longer optional whether or not you need to build your personal brand. You have to. If you want to be able to survive and thrive and make the biggest impact you can with your practice, you do need to build your personal brand. There are multiple ways to do it, but I found the easiest way to do it is to get interviewed by a colleague, by far. And I've looked at so many different ways, everything from, the social media ads to hosting virtual summits to building email campaigns, speaking on stages, and many, many other ways.
Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Medical Money Matters podcast. Marketing has become one of the most important and often misunderstood functions in healthcare. Many physicians rely on word-of-mouth referrals and assume that great clinical care alone will drive growth. While quality care remains essential, today's patients are increasingly searching online, reading reviews, engaging on social media, and making healthcare decisions based on their digital experience long before they ever walk through a practice's doors. Our guest today, Bret Gregory, is a nationally recognized digital strategist, platform builder, and growth expert who has helped organizations leverage technology, online communities, and social media to drive engagement and sustainable growth. He's the founder of drtalks.com, and throughout his career, Bret has been at the forefront of helping businesses understand how digital platforms influence consumer behavior and how organizations can build meaningful relationships at scale. In this episode, we're going to discuss how physician practices can market themselves effectively without wasting money, how to build trust in a digital-first world, and the practical strategies physicians can use to attract and retain patients in an increasingly competitive healthcare landscape. Bret, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jill, for having me. It's a real honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, let's start with the big picture. I'm hoping you can reflect for our audience a little bit about how healthcare marketing has changed over the past decade and what shifts physician practices need to understand to remain competitive today.
Sure. Well, boy, it sure has changed a lot. And I've actually been in marketing and sales my entire career. I actually started way back in 1996, learned a lot about marketing and sales when I first had my first business. I had an employee benefits business where we did corporate wellness programs. And it was that business where I hosted a talk radio show. And that's where I learned the power of the interview. So we're doing an interview right now. I learned the power of how you can build great relationships, an audience, and a business by doing interviews and being interviewed. And certainly that was, 30 years ago. A lot has changed over the last 30 years. But the interview has remained steadfast as a reliable way to very quickly build a relationship. And that could be building a relationship with the audience of the host. It could be building a relationship with the host and thereby building your personal brand, getting your information out there, educating the public population, becoming a key opinion leader in the process. And that has remained all the way through this, AI digital age that we're in today. You can still grow your brand, grow a business, become a key opinion leader by doing interviews. They're just typically on podcasts now instead of the radio quite as much. So yeah, I've seen a lot of change in the last decade where in the last decade, there was a big focus on social media marketing and building your brand that way. And while a lot of that still carries through today, what I've seen is, one of the most powerful pieces that a lot of clinicians, practice owners, and practice founders have missed is getting themselves out there, becoming that key opinion leader by becoming a guest on other podcasts. And so we've seen kind of a full circle from where that worked great 30 years ago and it's still working great today even through all of the AI that's happening now, through all of the social media, through all of the ads and all the different types of marketing channels, the interview still remains a great way for doctors to build trust with their prospective patients.
Yeah, that's fantastic and great insight for our audience. Talk a little bit about if a physician feels like that's a little gauche or it's kind of not done. I've heard that from physicians past when we talk about marketing. Talk a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, well, frequently, so as the founder of Doctor Talks, we have a platform to help doctors get booked on podcasts. And when I start sharing this information with practice owners and doctors, one of the things that I frequently hear from them is, well, I don't want to put myself out there, or why would anybody want to listen to me? And while those are actually two different issues, one thing I would say to doctors is, it is no longer optional whether or not you need to build your personal brand. You have to. If you want to be able to survive and thrive and make the biggest impact you can with your practice, you do need to build your personal brand. There are multiple ways to do it, but I found the easiest way to do it is to get interviewed by a colleague by far. And I've looked at so many different ways, everything from, the social media ads to hosting virtual summits to building email campaigns, speaking on stages, and many, many other ways. There's a lot of ways to do it, but the easiest way, the lowest cost, the lowest barrier to entry is to get interviewed by one of your colleagues. And, the format today that is most conducive to that is on podcasts. And so for a lot of people, if a lot of doctors are by nature introverts, and as a fellow introvert, I can totally empathize with that. I remember when I did my very first radio show interview, and I was 21 years old. I was sitting in the studio here in San Diego, California, and I was actually going to be interviewing the president of Qualcomm. Very big company. It was, it's one of the largest companies in San Diego. I'm 21 years old. I'm going to be interviewing the president of this multi-billion dollar company. I was sweating profusely. I remember how nervous I was. So I prepared my questions and I had them all ready to go, did the interview, and it went great. And all I did was I read the questions, he answered the questions. And afterward, what I realized is we were just having a conversation. But it was a conversation between two people. Sure, there was a microphone. Yes, it was being broadcast, but I couldn't see the audience. This wasn't in front of a live studio audience. It was live. It happened to be on live on the airwaves, but that's wasn't, my experience was I was having a conversation with somebody who I admired, I respected, and I was genuinely excited to ask questions and interview. And during that process, I built a relationship and, had a great opportunity to, be able to network with that person afterwards. And that's a big deal. And I had all of these benefits, and it took me just doing it to realize that it's just a conversation with another person, which frankly, it's what we're doing now. But I know that a lot of my fellow introverts out there get really nervous. And what I want to encourage you out there, if you're listening, if you've thought maybe I don't really want to do a podcast, but I know I need to get myself out there, this is the easiest way to do it. Have one of your colleagues, have one of your doctor friends interview you. So it's not on a podcast, but it gives you a chance to get a practice one under your belt. It's the fastest, easiest way to start to create your own content and build your personal brand and get yourself out there.
That's fantastic advice. I love it. So if I'm a physician, we actually talk about this extensively inside of our physician leadership project. And one of the things that I've said many times is physicians are never not a leader. And I always say the double negative on purpose, that it's like, as a physician, just given your education and your position in the community, your position in society, you are always a leader. People are always looking to you for advice, not only in the exam room, but out in the community. And so I think that's a great place to start when a physician
Mhm.
wants to think about marketing his or her practice or the group as a whole. So what kinds of tips would you give physicians other than the practice interview? I love that one. What else
Mhm.
say to a physician who's preparing for a podcast interview?
Sure. Well, here's the other objection that I get a lot when I'm encouraging doctors to get on a podcast. Frequently, they say, "Well, why me? Why does anyone care what I have to say?" And it's related cousin. Well, hasn't that topic been talked about ad nauseum on podcast? And so, I want to just share a personal story to answer that. So, I had my practice from 1996 to 2006. And sadly, in January of 2006, my 32-year-old brother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. He was actually given 9 months to live. He ended up passing away peacefully in our father's arms just 9 months after that diagnosis. My father's a doctor. My mother's a nurse, and she did palliative care. He literally had the best care that anybody in that situation could possibly have. He lived with them for his last 9 months, had the care of, two incredible experts who loved him and did everything they possibly could. And I got to witness, to see firsthand what a privilege it is to have a doctor in the family, to
Yes.
have somebody who can help you and answer your medical and health questions that us lay people, it's terrifying in the face of diagnoses. And my point in sharing that quick little story is to let you doctors who are listening know you are so valuable. And it is, such a privilege just to be able to have a conversation with you. And that I'm telling you the truth, because when you go to a cocktail party, everybody asks you questions, medical questions, and people don't just want to hear from you, they need to hear from you. So don't ask why me. Don't ask, hasn't this been done before? Ask yourself, do you want to make an impact? And if the answer is yes, this is the easiest step towards making that impact that are able to make. And it's also the step that's going to get you to become that key opinion leader that you want to be, that sought after speaker that you want to be. And it leads to so many other opportunities, not just the least of which are practice growth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I've been told, and I've had the experience many times, that sometimes it is the way in which an individual says something or the words that they
Absolutely.
choose that can really make an impact on the audience. And you may not even realize it at the time. But to your point, there is an awful lot of impact that can be had by the physicians
And
in our
And
audience.
on that note, frequently people ask, well, how do I do that? Or how do I say what I want to say in the very best way? And the very simple answer is stories. So I just shared a personal story with you. It's very likely that from this interview, that's something that everybody's going to remember. And what the takeaway you should have as a doctor and a listener, if you want people to pay attention, to be memorable, and to be that leader when you're being interviewed, is to tell stories. And very simply, as a doctor, if you want to try to build your business, patient success stories. And it's really important when you're telling a patient success story, because that's going to help you attract the kind of patients, more of the kind of patients that you want. Telling that patient a success story, you do want to be specific. Now, you don't need to share the patient's name. Of course, you can be specific while maintaining confidentiality, but specificity are those details that help make the story come alive in the listener's mind. That's what makes it very memorable. That's what really makes you stand out. So you can very simply educate your audience, whomever your patients and whoever you're trying to attract and educate, by telling patient success stories.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I like that. And also just the ability to keep those things confidential as we need to. I'd
Mhm.
love to pick up on something you said a minute ago about personal brand. I think that is a little bit of a foreign concept to a lot of clinicians and physicians in our audience. With your years of experience, can you expand on that a little bit? Maybe begin with a definition and then talk about why that's so important.
Sure. Well, yeah, building your personal brand can take a lot of different forms, but you are the leader of your practice. People want to follow you. They view you as the mentor that's going to help them make the transformation that they are seeking. And that could simply be, healing, getting better from particular symptoms, or, being their long-term physician. And in order to do that, in order to attract the kind of patients that you want to attract, you do need to build your personal brand. And so a lot of that, what that looks like today, are getting followers on social media. So that's a pretty easy one, pretty obvious one, not so easy. But that's where I recommend, as the best way to build your brand, is you're going to need to start creating content for your social media channels. And in building that content, the fastest, easiest way is to get interviewed by a colleague. And so that's why, again, I'm so, bullish on the podcast, because it is such an easy way to create a lot of content that you can then create clips and put on all of your different social media profiles. So that's, one aspect of building a brand. Another aspect of building a brand is having, growing your email list. That's also a very important part of the process. And I find, some of the best ways to do that while you're being interviewed. You can take some of that content, run it through Claude or your favorite LLM, and have it create lead magnets. And so that would be information where you can provide solutions to your patients and your audience on the specific conditions. So, maybe you help people with gut health, or maybe you're a surgeon, or whatever your particular area of expertise is. You can create some kind of an ebook, PDF downloadable lead magnet. And it's really helpful after you're interviewed. You could take the recording of the interview and have your favorite LLM, help create an ebook out of that, put that on your website so you can grow your email list. Just one final note on the email list. I would much rather have 10,000 people on my email newsletter than 10,000 followers on any social media channel. Even 100,000 followers on a social media channel, the 10,000 person email list will beat that any and every time. And a lot of doctors also say, I want to write a book. Great. That's another great way to build your personal brand. If you want to get published and you want people to buy the book, having an email list is by far the most effective way to do that. You would much rather have 10,000 people on your email list than 100,000 on your social media, because you'll be able to sell thousands of books to your email list, but not so much on the social media. And that's been a pretty consistent theme.
Got it. Thank you for calling that out, because I might have guessed the other way around. If you
it's a common misnomer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the biggest concerns that we hear from physicians is, this marketing is a little foreign to me, and also I don't have a lot of time to do this. So how can busy physicians participate in marketing without having it become a second full-time job?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's over 3,000 doctors who have channels on Doctor Talks, and all of them have created some video content, but 99% of it is an interview. I find I've spoken, lost count of how many thousands of doctors that I've spoken to. And I used to ask doctors to come up with a signature talk. And a signature talk is kind of a great way to, get booked on speaking gigs and do webinars and things like that. But whenever I would ask a doctor to create their signature talk, 6 months later, they would maybe have 2 slides ready, and they didn't have their signature talk anywhere near close to done. Or, in some cases they had 500 slides and it still wasn't anywhere near close to done. But I could take that exact same doctor and that exact same topic, and in 5 minutes, if they're going to be interviewed by a colleague or a friend, they're ready to go with that signature talk. So I found that, again, just kind of going back full circle to the interviews, if they're want to create content for marketing, being interviewed is the fastest, easiest way to do that by far. And yeah, so that's the other thing is, for a lot of our doctors who create content and create podcasts, what I tell them is you have to make it work for your schedule. So, I mean, we've produced over 7,500 episodes at Doctor Talks, and every doctor is a little bit different in terms of their scheduling and their needs and what's going to work for their schedule. We have some doctors that just very systematically, once a week, they take the time that their office time when they're not seeing patients, and that's when they block out to record. And either they're hosting or guesting as an interview, or they're just creating, looking to a camera and hitting record and creating content from a quick little script. The other end of the spectrum is that I have some doctors who are just crazy busy, and twice a year they block out time during 2 weeks where they'll just record 6 months worth of their episodes. And then we have everything in between. Some doctors do it once a month. Some doctors do it every other week. It just needs to work for you. That's really the most important part. And we've also found, I'm a big fan of crawl, walk, run. So I would say to a doctor who's, just getting started, the crawling phase, just go and do a podcast interview. And if you're too afraid to do a podcast, have a colleague interview you on Zoom. Nobody else is watching. It's just a great way to get that the first butterflies out. That's the crawl phase. And the walk phase would be recording your own content. So a lot of doctors who want to build their social media channels and their YouTube channels, we have a whole system and a process where we help doctors grow, a large YouTube following. And we have a system a copywriting system where we work with the doctors to come up with 8 short scripts. And then when I say short, they can look in the camera, hit record, and there's a lot of very simple software that's teleprompter software, and it makes your eyes look like you're looking right in the camera. It's very simple and low cost.
Yeah.
And they would read these scripts that are from 5 minutes to 10 minutes long. And you can knock out 8 of those in one sitting. So for 2 hours a month, you can create 8 great videos per month. And it's really easy if you can brainstorm and have Claude help you brainstorm a bunch of topics that you see patients for, and then have Claude create scripts for you. Some people prefer it word for word scripts. Some people just want to riff off of bullet points. Whatever style is your preference, choose that and give it a try. And that's a incredibly time efficient way to create those 8 videos. And then from those 8 videos, you can create a month's worth of social media content from clips from those videos. And so that's another very efficient way in the phase. And then when you're ready to run, that's typically hosting a podcast. And that's, again, where you need to make it work for your schedule. So some doctors will just block out one afternoon per week. Other ones will batch them once per month. They'll record, 4 or 5 episodes once per month. You just have to make it work for you. And the last thing that I'll say is, on that run phase, when you're ready to host your own show, whether that's a podcast or a channel, it's got to work for your time, and it also has to be fun. Yeah. That's the working with thousands of doctors. That's the one side effect that they are always surprised by when they come back and say, I've been wanting to do this podcast so long. I finally got my first few interviews. It is so much fun. Yeah. And I get that reaction every single time. Yeah. And then there's all these other ancillary benefits that come out of it. They get business. They get asked to be on other podcasts. They get asked to speak. They become that key opinion leader, that sought after speaker. And then they also grow, I call it super networking. Mm-hmm. They get to be connected with other doctors that have large social media platforms, that have large podcast followings, and their, to use the old term, Rolodex becomes filled with, big time key opinion leaders, influencers in the medical field.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that's a
Mhm.
great segue into one of probably my second to last question, which is, and I love the notion of there being some fun involved in all of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
When it comes to practice growth and brand development, as we've been talking about, what are some of the biggest marketing mistakes that you see clinicians and physicians make that kind of waste time and money?
I think the first biggest kind of universal mistake is not getting started in the first place. That's probably the biggest thing that I see, where people are holding themselves back and really focus on perfectionism. I'm not ready to do this presentation. I'm not ready to answer questions. That's definitely the biggest one that I see. The other one that I see is when people do create their content, they don't repurpose any of it. So somebody takes the time to go on a podcast, they get an interview, they don't ask for a copy of the podcast and permission to, hey, can I have a team create clips and use this for my social media and put it on my website. That's a really efficient use of your time, and it's something that you really ought to do. The other thing is for doctors who do host their own podcast, it's not asking for interview swaps. So I'll keep kind of going back to the theme of I'm a big fan of being a guest on another podcast. That is an incredibly time efficient way for you to get your message out there, attract new patients, build your personal brand. Because when you're being interviewed by a host, the trust that the host has with their audience gets transposed onto you.
Yep.
And so you're automatically, even though it's being interviewed on someone else's podcast is not technically endorsement, it's a unwritten endorsement. That trust that they have with their audience gets transposed to you. You very quickly can build trust with that audience, and that can help you, attract new traffic leads and patients to help you grow your practice. So those are, some of the main big mistakes that I see doctors make that can help them be very efficient with their time.
Yeah, got it. I love the notion of repurposing the interview and
Yes.
really parsing it
Mhm.
out. There, as you're saying, there are a lot of different LLMs and a lot of tools out there that can help you to do that really effectively. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
fantastic. Well, I think you and I could probably talk marketing and
Well, I'm sure.
personal brand building all day.
Yeah.
One final question for our audience. And I always like to do a little bit of a look ahead. How do you see technology, AI, the LLMs that are out there and available, along with evolving social media platforms, changing how healthcare marketing is going to go over the next 5 years or so? It's a little hard to look in a crystal ball much beyond that. Things are
Mhm.
changing so rapidly. And so, what should physicians start doing today to prepare?
Mhm. Well, as I had said earlier, building your personal brand is not optional. It used to be optional. Those days are over. If you want to build your practice, if you want to have a practice that you can sell someday, if you want to be the key opinion leader, if you want to be the sought after speaker, people aren't just going to find you only via word of mouth. That will only get you so far, and you may not be able to get enough referrals to stay ahead. So you do need to build your personal brand. The great news is that it's never been easier to do that. And that's a big part of what we've spent so much time creating at Doctor Talks. My tagline that I like to say is we're democratizing the creator economy for doctors. Simply put,
Yep.
we're making it as easy as possible for and free for you to build your personal brand, you to get the word out there, educate the population, become that key opinion leader, start to create content, and you can do so for free. And so at drtalks.com, I'll just give you the URL. That's drtalks.com/connect. That's where doctors can sign up for a free channel, And we've made it, you could kind of think of us, we're sort of like a hybrid. So we're like YouTube, but all the content creators are doctors. And we've got 11 million patient and health consumer web visitors who come, and you can create content for free. And then we're kind of like a hybrid between LinkedIn. So all of the doctors are able to message one another. You can connect with other doctors through Doctor Talks. And all of the doctors have channels. All of the doctors are creating content. All of the doctors are interested in doing interviews and, hosting and guesting. So it's the fastest, easiest, free way to start getting booked on interviews. We have hundreds of doctor hosted podcasts that are totally free. So you don't have to hire a PR agency. There are people who I meet frequently, especially when somebody's coming out with a book. I pay this PR agency $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month to get us booked on podcast. Well, guess what? You can do that for free on Doctor Talks. You can create your channel. You can get booked on podcasts. You can message other doctors. And we have a really great AI matching tool. We've streamlined the process to help doctors get booked on podcasts for free.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we get your URL and all the great ways to connect with you into the show notes for everybody who's listening. But
Wonderful.
Bret, thank you. Thank you first and foremost for the work that you're doing in the community. And then secondly, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Jill. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm a big fan. So thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, if you're listening to this and thinking, it's not just one thing, there are multiple parts of my practice that could be running better, I want you to know that you're not alone. Most physicians were never taught how to run the business side of medicine, and yet you're expected to lead complex, multi-million-dollar organizations. That's not a personal failing, it's a systems gap. At Healthy Practices, our operational and strategic consulting is designed to help you close that gap. We work alongside physicians and leadership teams to bring clarity to the business. Everything from workflow and staffing models to financial performance, growth strategy, and long-term planning. The goal is to help you move from reactive and overwhelmed to structured, intentional, and in control. For some practices, that means solving immediate operational pain points. For others, it's about stepping back and building a clear strategy for sustainable growth, profitability, and leadership development. And often, it's both. Because when your systems, your people, and your financial performance are aligned, everything gets easier. Decisions become clearer, teams function better, and the day-to-day stress starts to come down. So if you're ready to take a more intentional look at how your practice is operating and where it could go next, I'd encourage you to reach out and start the conversation. You can find more information in the show notes or at healtheps.com.